Hey everyone, this is Phyto Revival, the podcast, and I know it's been a couple weeks, but I am finally getting everything set up and trying to get into a routine to stay consistent for you guys. If you do not know, we just made a move across several states, and so it was kind of a big move, and when you have more than one or two children, it can be very daunting, especially when you've been at the last location for 15 years. So anyways, today's podcast, we're going to talk about tinctures. And before I get started, I do want to let you guys know that my podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not designed to diagnose, treat, or cure. I am not an MD. I don't have a medical license. I am just really, really good at what I do in understanding herbs and how to use them effectively on the body. And tinctures is a really good way to be able to extract the phytochemicals from the herbs and get the actions and the desired results that you want by using plants. And one thing I love about herbal medicine is that plants work with your body, not for your body. So it's not forcing your body to do something that it can do on its own. You just got to give it the right materials. So today, I'm going to answer some questions like what's the differences between the different tinctures? How do they work? How do I know when you should use a tincture? What percentage of alcohol do you use? What types of alcohols do you use? And what if you have celiac disease? Because a lot of alcohols are made with wheat, barley, and rye. So is it still safe? Are there things that you do? Well, I'm about to go over all of that. So alcohol, glycerin, apple cider vinegar, these are all the main solvents that we use in making tinctures. So I'm just going to go on ahead and get started here. I did just kind of kick all of my kids out of the house because it is summer break, and so I am going to talk kind of fast. If you are sitting down, you might want to get a pen and paper because I'm about to completely dump a lot of information on you, and I'm going to try to do it quickly because you never know with kids how long you actually have to get it done. So, first off, I'm going to talk about alcohol tinctures. Alcohol tinctures are concentrated, well, all tinctures are concentrated herbal extracts made by soaking plant material into alcohol. We use ethanol, not rubbing alcohol. So, go to a spirits or liquor store. You can't go to a convenience store and grab the rubbing alcohol. Just don't do that. Please don't. There's your warning. But we do this to draw out the active compounds and the phytochemicals of the plant. Alcohol tinctures is one of the oldest and most effective methods in herbal extraction. It has been used for an extremely long time. I didn't research on when the first known use of alcohol tincture was done, but that is an interesting question that just popped into my head. So that happens too. But how do tinctures work? Well, the alcohol is a solvent and extracts the phytochemicals like terpenes, I can't speak today, and alkaloids from the herbs. And it also can work as a preservative depending on the type of tincture that you're using or making. It can last from anywhere from 6 months to forever, depending on the cleanliness of the equipment that you're using and the type of tincture that you are making. Alcohols that are usually used in alcohol tinctures are like vodka or grain alcohol, and it's usually at 40 to 60%, which is 80 to 120 proof alcohol. So what can be tinctured? Well, this depends on the plant or the plants that you are using and the phytochemicals that you are really trying to extract. Essentially, any part of the plant, the leaves, the roots, the berries, the bark, the seeds, all of that is usable in your tincture, but it may not be usable depending on the plant that you are working with. So be mindful, do your research on the plant, see what parts of the plant are most commonly used. Okay. So the next type of tincture we're going to talk about are glycerites, which these are glycerin tinctures. And glycerin tinctures can be used using glycerin instead of an alcohol as a solvent. This is great for especially children as it is a sweet, syrupy liquid. Sounds great, but I do have to tell you that this form of tincture does not extract all the phytochemicals that an alcohol tincture can, but it still does extract a lot. So this is not going to be as potent as the alcohol tincture, but it's still a very good alternative if you can't use alcohol. So this is also a better way to give tinctures to not only children, but also pets and those that need to avoid alcohol. So what is glycerin? Well, it is a thick, clear, sweet liquid that's derived from vegetable oils, most commonly palm, coconut, or soy. So if you're allergic to palm, coconut, or soy, glycerites might not be the right option for you. So if you're ever allergic to any of the ingredients, then of course you need to avoid it. Glycerin is mostly water soluble, but it is capable of extracting certain alcohol soluble plant compounds, just like the alcohol. Glycerin has the capability of preserving, but it's not as great of a preservative as alcohol is. Based on how sterile your equipment is when you're making a glycerite, you can have a shelf life of up to 1 to 2 years max, but generally I tell people 6 months to a year because you just don't know and you want to be on the safe side. But please pay close attention to your product. Any discoloration or foul smells, stay safe and just toss it and make another one. As a recap, when should you use a glycerite? Well, glycerites are great for alcohol-sensitive individuals, herbal blends used in syrups or teas, and when taste matters, like for kids. So, Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, is what always kind of plays in my head when I'm talking about glycerites. The last tincture we're going to go over is apple cider vinegar tincture. This is also, you'll see ACV a lot, which is just an acronym for apple cider vinegar. You may also hear this referred to as a vinegar extract. So instead of alcohol or glycerin, you're going to be using apple cider vinegar. This is another alternative for those that need to avoid alcohol and want something a little bit more shelf stable than just the water-based remedies, like the teas, decoctions, infusions, and all of that. And just to pause for a moment, I do want to tell you guys that I do have live a herbal medicine program. You can either pay out front or there is payment options. And so go to the Phyto Revival community page. I will have more information on that. I'm still re-updating all of my websites and everything, but you can keep checking dezhaley.info, DEZHALEY.info, INFO, for more information as well. Okay, so why would we want to use apple cider vinegar? Well, ACV can extract certain nutrients like minerals, alkaloids, and some acids, and it also has preservative qualities to help it last up to a year. This tincture has the lowest shelf life of all the other tinctures. It also, though, has its own health benefits, such as being antimicrobial, and can also be a digestive aid. It is safe for children and alcohol-sensitive adults and also pets, but you want to make sure that your apple cider vinegar is at 5% acidity. So what are the real differences between the tinctures? Some of this I'm going to go over again, but when it comes to taste, apple cider vinegar is tart and sour, alcohol is sharp and bitter, and glycerin is very sweet. The shelf life for apple cider vinegar is usually 6 to 12 months. Alcohol is anywhere between 3 years to infinity, and glycerin is 1 to 2 years. The preservative power of apple cider vinegar is very moderate, alcohol is excellent, and glycerin is mild to moderate. So, and then another thing I just want to bring up right now is that, oh my gosh, my mind just kind of blanked out on me for a second, is when you are done making the tincture, you need to make sure that any organic material is removed from the blend because organic material will promote bacterial growth. So once you're done infusing, you need to make sure that you get that completely extracted out. Apple cider vinegar is the best for mineral-rich herbs and food-based blends, where alcohol is the most potent phytochemical extraction available, and glycerin is for sweet and gentle remedies, again, like those for elderly and children. The best herbs for vinegar tinctures are definitely ones that are mineral rich because apple cider vinegar does tend to extract a lot more minerals out of the plant than the other solvents. So, mineral rich herbs such as nettle, oat straw, and horsetail, digestive herbs such as dandelion, ginger, and fennel, immune herbs such as garlic, thyme, and onion, and food herbs such as turmeric, rosemary, and basil. Another cool thing about the apple cider vinegar tincture is you can use it as a base in salad dressing, or you can mix it with honey and make an oxymel, which is a sweet herbal tonic. Or you can even dilute it and use it topically on the skin and scalp for a rinse for those that have problematic skin issues. I guess that was kind of redundant, but anyway. Now that you know how much alcohol to use in your tinctures, can you overdo it? Is the strength of the alcohol too strong for what you really need? Because alcohol can be kind of costly. So if you only need 20% and you have 80%, do you just use the 80% or how do you go about with that? Well, great question. Glad you asked. Fresh herbs do contain water, and this will dilute the alcohol naturally. So when you're working with fresh herbs, you need to make sure that you have a higher proof alcohol for fresh herbs over what you would use for dried. Then it depends on what chemical you're trying to extract. I haven't made it yet, but I can put all this information in a handout and put it on the Phyto Revival community page for you so you can easily just print it out and put it on your fridge or wherever you need it. Or if you're making your own remedy book, you can go ahead and put it in there. So when you're wanting to extract these different types of phytochemicals, this is what is recommended on the percentage of alcohol. So alkaloids, you will need 60 to 90% alcohol. Resins are 80 to 95% alcohol. You do need a higher alcohol percentage for resins. Tannins, you only need 20 to 40%. Flavonoids, you will need 40 to 60%. Polysaccharides, 25 to 40%, and most polysaccharides are water extractable as well. So, and that's another thing I want to touch base on real quick. Alcohol, when it's like 40% alcohol, then it's 60% water. Okay, so not only are you getting the chemicals that can be extracted by alcohol, but you're also getting the chemicals that can be extracted by water as well. So that's also what makes tinctures so potent. And then glycosides, which are 30 to 60% alcohol. And when you're making tinctures, the standard ratios for fresh herbs is 1 to 2. And this with the alcohol strength of 60 to 80%. So this will be 1 part herb and 2 parts alcohol. Dried herbs are 1 part herb and 5 parts alcohol. And in general recommendations for roots, barks, and resins are 60 to 95% alcohol. Leaves and flowers are much less at 40 to 60%. And for most fresh herbs, again, you need a higher percentage of alcohol, which is usually 70% or higher, and you have to do this to avoid spoilage. Now that you know, like, kind of the basics of depending on the part of the plant that you're using, what chemical that you're actually trying to target, and all of this, what happens if you need to dilute alcohol that you only have, say, Everclear, which is 95% alcohol because you're out of vodka or whatever else that you may typically use? Well, it is completely possible to dilute your alcohol. And so here, this next part, I'm going to try to slow down a little bit because to wrap your head around the math that I'm about to go through. But again, I will be making some handouts and putting them into the Phyto Revival community group on Facebook. And so that way you can just print these out. So anyway, If you're going to dilute alcohol, you need to use distilled water to get your desired result. This is very useful, like I said, especially if you only have 95%, and that's too strong for most tinctures, unless, like I mentioned, you're using it for resin or making shelf-stable fresh herb tinctures. So say you want to dilute that 95% alcohol and make it 50%, and you need 500 milliliters. So first you need to figure out how much alcohol is needed. You're going to take the final volume, which is that 500, and you're going to multiply it by the target, which is going to be 50 because you want 50% alcohol. So in this case, you're going to take the 500, which is the total volume that's needed, times the 50%, which is the alcohol percentage that you need. This is going to give you 25,000. Then you're going to divide that by the alcohol percentage that you have. So you're going to take the 500, the volume, you're going to times it by the 50% alcohol, which is your target, and you're going to divide it by what you have, which is, in this case, 95%. So you're going to take the 25,000 and divide it by 95, and your result is going to be 263.2 milliliters. Okay, so this is the amount of alcohol that, say you have a 5 milliliter beaker, 263.2 milliliters is going to be alcohol. From that, to finish out how much distilled water you need, you're going to take that 500, that final volume that you need, and you're going to subtract that number we just got. So you're going to subtract the 263.2, and it's going to give you 236.8. This is the amount of milliliters of water you're going to need. So to finish it up, you're going to take the 263 of the 95% alcohol with the 237 milliliters of distilled water, and you will end up with 500 milliliters of 50% alcohol. And this is extremely awesome. Like I said, either you just don't have it on hand, and it also makes sure that you are not just wasting alcohol, which it's not cheap. It costs money. So, work smarter, not harder, right? Okay, so now to another question. What happens if you have celiacs? Because we had talked about that most commonly grain alcohol is used in tinctures. But what if grain alcohol may be problematic? And is it problematic for celiacs? And in short, yes, it can be. It absolutely can be. You may still want to avoid any grain alcohol, but it is a little bit more complicated than that. Because if you're already purchasing a tincture that's already made, you definitely want to do the research with the manufacturer and ask some questions. Grain alcohol like vodka, gin, or Everclear is made from gluten-containing grains, which means that there is wheat, rye, or barley. However, the distillation removes gluten proteins, meaning that pure distilled alcohol is considered gluten-free, even if it comes from gluten grains. According to the experts like the Celiac Disease Foundation, distilled alcohol is safe for people with celiac disease as long as no gluten-containing flavorings or additives are added after the distillation. But even though the alcohol itself is gluten-free, you are still at risk of cross-contamination. The facility or the place the tincture was made could be an issue. Some people with celiacs are so sensitive that they could react to trace residues. So flavored spirits, liquors, and infused alcohols that may contain gluten-based additives or thickeners would definitely be a problem. So some alcohol options for those that are gluten sensitive are certified gluten-free vodka, and this is vodka that's made from potatoes, grapes, or corn. Pure rum, as it is made from sugarcane. Pure tequila, because it's 100% agave. And mezcal, brandy, and cognac. These are distilled from grapes. Hard cider, but check the labels because some of them may contain barley. So now that we've covered all of that, I'm going to give you some basic formulas for these tinctures that will be a great guide in really fine-tuning how you want to practice your herbal medicine. So for a basic alcohol tincture, you need some of your chopped up plant material. And it's really important, don't chop it up until you're about ready to use it. You want to make sure it stays as intact as it can, because when you break it out, when you chop it up, volatile oils and stuff will start extracting. Those are your essential oils, by the way, if you don't know. So you're going to chop up your plant material, you're going to add the alcohol, and you're going to steep it for 2 to 6 weeks. Now, how much material and how much alcohol is going to, we already talked about the alcohol part, but it's also going to change depending on whether you're using fresh herbs or dried plant. So if you're using fresh herbs, you want 1 part plant and 2 parts alcohol. So you'll see a 1-2 ratio. Or for dried plants, you want 1 part plant, 5 parts alcohol, which is a 1-5. The tinctures are usually taken in drops or milliliter, and usually 10 to 30 drops in a water or beverage of your choice to get the benefits from your tincture. So if you don't like teas or whatever, that's fine. Just take a tincture and drop it into your coffee, or drop it into your fresh fruit juice, or whatever beverage that is going to be the carrier of getting these chemicals into you. So the glycerite formula, because remember, glycerites are using glycerin instead of alcohol. For the dried herbs, you're going to want 3-part glycerin and 1 part distilled water. So you're going to make a glycerin base. And then once you make that base, you want to use a 1-to-5 ratio of glycerin mixture, which is 1 part herb and 5 parts glycerin base. For fresh herbs, you're going to want to use 100% glycerin and a 1-to-2 ratio. So that's going to be 1 part herb and 2 parts glycerin. To make this, you want to again chop up the herbs finely right before you use them and put them in a clean and sterile jar, cover completely with the glycerin or the glycerin base depending on which herbs you are using. You want to cap it and you want to shake it daily. Glycerites, they need to sit for 4 to 6 weeks in a cool, dark place. Now for the apple cider vinegar formula, you're going to use with fresh herbs, you're going to use 1 part herb and 2 parts vinegar. For dried, you're going to use 1 part herb and 5 parts vinegar. You're going to chop up the herbs and place in a clean and sterile glass jar. You pour your apple cider vinegar over the herbs, completely submerging them. You're going to cap tightly, and because this is apple cider vinegar, you may want to put parchment paper under the lid if you're using a metal lid. Again, also store it in a cool, dark place for 2 to 4 weeks. As for all the types of tinctures, when it's ready to be extracted for the allotted amount of time, use a cheesecloth or superfine mesh to strain the organic material out of the medicine. Make sure that you bottle and label with the date and the ingredients used. Please do not forget this step. We always think that, oh, we'll just do it in a little bit. You may not have a pen around. Stop what you're doing. Do it right now, because we're only human. And by the time you come around to it, you're going to be like, crap, what day was that? When did I do that? Like, just do yourself a favor. If anything, even write the label and put it on the jar before you pour the tincture. I do that all the time. I just think that, oh, I'll just get to it in a moment. And then I'm like, oh, crap, what's this? So do yourself a favor. Make sure you label it first. Well, that is it for what I have for tinctures. Another thing, too, is if you're in the Phyto Revival community page, I have started doing some phytochemical sheets on different herbs. I try to work on those when I can find time, but it will also tell you what extraction or what solvent that you need to extract the chemicals and what therapeutic actions that the different chemicals have in the plant. Again, I know this is a lot of information, and I know that I was talking fast, but I really do appreciate all of you guys, and thank you guys for being patient with me. My husband and I are sharing an office, so it's going to be a little bit harder for me to to do things on a certain day at a certain time, because like I tend to go with the flow and I go on the path of least resistance. So just to let you know, if I'm a little late getting a podcast out, that's why. It's not that I don't love you. I appreciate all of you, and I look forward to talking to you guys again. All right. Thank you. Bye.